Here's the question of the day. What happens if we go to war with China? Notice I did not ask what happens if China goes to war against us. That's because China's been at war with us for at least a decade, maybe longer. It was in 2013 that Xi Jinping rose to power. Shortly afterward, it became official Chinese policy to de-Americanize the world. This was written in an official CCP publication. Of course, the Washington Post immediately downplayed the story. Here's their headline from October 2013. Calm down, Washington. China doesn't really want to de-Americanize. Here are some quotes from the article. We can calm down on the threat to de-Americanize, though. China has shown little to no indication that it seriously wants to displace the United States as the global leader anytime soon, or even that it believes it could do this. Wow! Here's another quote that didn't age well. The mistake we often make here in Washington is seeing China's rise and assuming that the country's next goal will be to displace the United States as global leader. This wrongly assumes that Beijing thinks like Washington. There is a similar view of how the world works and a similar set of goals. It also wildly overstates China's actual power. Now, anyone following this program or reading any of my books or blogs knows this was simply naive and ignorant. We've been on this for 15 years with warnings, facts, and action plans. My cover story in The Counterterrorist was published in August 2011. The title is China at War with the USA. 5 years ago, I published a blog series titled The Winds of War, which detailed just why and how we would soon be at war with China and also by proxy with Russia. Now, we'll put links to these posts in our economic battle plan. Here's a direct quote that I wrote in 2018. I said, China has been preparing for a war footing. There are multiple clues that when pieced together suggest that a combination attack plan using economic pressure, technology, and physical invasion to assert Chinese dominance in Asia and ultimately over the planet. It is no longer acceptable to naively overlook this reality. That same year, I testified in Congress. Take a look at what I said.
I believe that this is a part, my colleagues mentioned the Made in China 2025 policy, which is designed to have China self-sufficient in certain industries and areas. I believe that too is a form of economic warfare, and I believe all of this fits with a part of the 100-year marathon. I brought a book from my friend Mike Pillsbury, who wrote about the 100-year marathon, and I would point you to the fact that in 1949, the People's Republic of China was formed, and 100 years from that period would be 2049. This is an important date to recognize because the Chinese have learned from the Tiananmen Square incident in 1989 that 20 years later they were able to host the Olympics in Beijing. So the belief, as I understand it in China, is that within 2 decades you can remove a massacre and a horrific event from the world's consciousness and memory. Therefore, if the goal is to have essentially the largest economy and the most powerful position in the world by 2049, the idea would be that you have to be completed with your horrific activity by the year 2029. So I would suggest that over the next decade, we will see a more aggressive China than we have seen in the past.
Not to brag, but I was 100% right. If you haven't seen the Chinese belligerents, you're not paying attention. Even the FBI admits that the COVID pandemic was likely caused by a leak from a Chinese lab in Wuhan. The Chinese knew that, and they hid it from the world. They also let it spread unnecessarily and slowed the world's response. It's taken a long time to come to grips with the truth. China is at war with us. So far, it's been a Cold War. We opened the show with a comparison to 1936 Germany, but war may actually be closer now than it was then. Even the New York Times has noticed the risk of war with China. On February 27th, they published a piece titled, "A War with China Would Be Unlike Anything Americans Faced Before." A major war in the Indo-Pacific, they said, is probably more likely than at any time since World War II. The most probable spark is a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. They talk about using cyber, media warfare, EMP, supply chain, everything else at their disposal. All of this is very real, and yet the American people are ignoring the threat just like they ignored Nazi Germany in the 30s.